when my backyard hen sparked a neighborhood showdown with my grumpy neighbor. I never imagined I'd become a chicken ambassador fighting for feathered freedom. Would humor or conflict win the day? As the morning light streamed through my kitchen window, I could hear the sweet sounds of Henrietta and Cluck Norris, engaging in what I assumed was their version of a morning gossip session. I chuckled to myself, imagining them plotting their escapades like breakfast-time gossip queens. But my tranquil moment was abruptly broken by the sound of stomping. Oh, the unmistakable sound of Karen Thompson. I braced myself, rolling my eyes, as her figure came into view with all the grace of a tank rolling through my garden. "Ethan," she bellowed, her stern face all twisted and tight like she'd just bitten into a lemon. "Those noisy hens are ruining my morning." I'd like to think I've mastered the skill of remaining calm in the face of conflict. But right then, I felt my blood pressure spike faster than a chicken can fly, which, if you didn't know, isn't very high at all. I stood there, half amused and half flabbergasted. Did she really think that her precious morning coffee was more important than the joyful clucking of my feathery ladies? I mean, come on. What's next? Complaining about the sun shining too brightly? I couldn't help it. Her exaggerated outrage was like comedy gold. "Karen," I began, probably sounding more light-hearted than I should have. "They're chickens. They're not breaking a sound barrier. They're merely expressing their excitement for the day." As I spoke, Cluck Norris strutted over, puffing out his chest as if to defend the honor of chickenkind, and I couldn't help but chuckle. Karen, however, looked positively appalled, as if I'd just suggested we hold a barbecue in her backyard. While I attempted to reason with Karen, I noticed the way her perfectly styled hair seemed to ruffle with each emphatic stomp. It hit me. It was like I was in a bizarre reality show, where my chickens were the stars and my ultra-critical neighbor was the unexpected antagonist. I mean, she could use a dose of humor in her life. "Is your morning so fragile that a couple of hens dooms it?" I mused aloud, trying my best not to burst into laughter. Behind me, I could hear the gentle clucking of my chickens, almost as if they were chiming in, agreeing that my morning coffee, when shared with them, was the best kind of magic. But Karen stood her ground, arms folded across her chest, ready to deliver what I could only assume was chicken-related hell on earth. Just as I thought her tirade couldn't escalate further, she whipped out her phone. "I'm calling the city," she proclaimed, her tone dripping with the kind of authority only someone with a very structured grievance could muster. "They'll never grant you a poultry permit. You think this is a farm?" She narrowed her eyes, and in that moment, I could practically see the gears turning as she plotted her victory over clucks and feathers. Oh, how naive she was. Are we even in a neighborhood anymore? It feels more like a scene from Chicken Run. I couldn't help but think as I stifled a laugh. Little did she know my fine feathered friends were not only charming, but also completely legal, thanks to a recent city ordinance that encouraged sustainable backyard farming. And oh boy, was I about to throw that in her face like an overripe tomato. Later that day, with Maya by my side, I happily pored over the local laws and regulations. You know, Henrietta could teach Karen a thing or two about resilience. I quipped, showing Maya the page that outlined how to apply for the aforementioned poultry permit. "Her complaints will only strengthen my resolve to present girlfriend Hen here as the ambassador of backyard joy." Maya chuckled, flinging her fiery red hair behind her as she enthusiastically agreed. "Let's unleash our inner lawyers. You're no mere chicken owner. You're a poultry pioneer," she hollered, punctuating the air with a flourish that sent a nearby squirrel scurrying in pure shock. "Dare I say we're leading the charge for feathered freedom?" I grinned, already feeling my spirits lift as we rifled through forms and regulations like this was the most important undertaking of our lives. By the time Monday rolled around, I was ready, binder in hand, armed with ridiculously adorable photos of my ladies. I even crafted a PowerPoint titled, "Why My Chickens Bring Community Joy." Yes, you heard right. I was turning what could have been a drab, Karen-filled outing into a poultry extravaganza. Surrounded by my friends and neighbors, I felt lighter on my feet, fueled by the unity of our laughter and shared disbelief about how such a ridiculous situation had unfolded in our quaint neighborhood. When I stepped into the city office, I could practically feel the birds empowering me. I walked right up to the counter, grinned at the employee, and declared, I'm here to make chickens legal. And, as it turns out, the lady behind the desk, I later found out she was an avid chicken keeper herself, welcomed my enthusiasm with a beaming smile that felt like she had just found a golden egg. Soon I was threading through the paperwork like an obstacle course, and before I knew it, visions of chicken-centric city celebrations danced in my mind. The sounds of Karen's complaints faded into the background as I glanced out of the window to see my boys and girls scratching in the dirt, unwavering in their pursuit of happiness. Wouldn't it be delightful to see a poultry party complete with feathered decorations, booths manned by local farmers, and oh yes, a dedicated chicken beauty contest? What could possibly go wrong? By the time I left the city office, a euphoric adrenaline rush coursed through me, my mental celebration feeling personally choreographed by a Broadway musical. I'm officially a chicken ambassador, I shouted, throwing my arms up in triumph as I clutched the plastic folder filled with all the glorious documentation. Maya, who had been patiently scrolling through her phone, looked up with wide eyes and a wry grin. Did you just say chicken ambassador? Because that sounds like the title of a children's book that I would totally illustrate. She laughed, and I could only see the bright orange of her vibrant shirt against the dull backdrop of the city office. Honestly, we both knew I'd already mentally started drafting the plotline. There would be adventure, danger from rogue foxes, and best of all, friendship. Chickens were fantastic little buddies, after all. As we strolled out into the sun-drenched parking lot, I felt like I was conquering the world, strutting like Cluck Norris himself might, after a successful coupe raid. We both hopped into Maya's car, and I couldn't resist doing a little happy dance in the passenger seat. You know what this means, right? I asked, barely containing my excitement. This could be the start of a chickens are cool revolution. We'll get people on board. Before you know it, the neighborhood will be full of backyard coops. Maya turned the radio up as if to drown out any murmurs of disbelief. I tossed my head back and yelled over the music. There could be Cluck and Cook, cook-offs, hen shows, and maybe even exclusive events for members of the poultry cult. I can see it now. The Backyard Chicken Club. As those words left my mouth, I could have sworn I saw visions of Karen's baffled face as she tried to make sense of her neighbors turning into a poultry-popping community come to life. But Ethan, my tranquil mornings. I imagined her stammering, desperately clutching her morning coffee amid the chaos of joyful clucking. Karen, imagine how delightful it would be to share your breakfast with Henrietta and her friends. You'd have the perfect excuse to eat fresh eggs. I snorted at the absurdity of it all, reveling in the mental image of an unlikely alliance forming between me and my neighbor. What a sitcom that would be. Within a week, excitement bubbled across the neighborhood. Thanks to a few quirky social media posts and a tiny grassroots campaign fueled by chicken-themed memes starring my hens, interest in backyard poultry surged. I hosted a poultry meetup in my backyard, and to my delight, a plethora of fascinated neighbors arrived. Maya came dressed as Chicken Little, complete with a feathered hat and a beak-shaped mask, declaring loudly, "The chickens aren't just coming, they're here, and they're fabulous." The mood was infectious. I felt like a proud mother hen, showcasing my ladies and explaining everything from their personalities to the best treat for a clucking companion. The main event? A chicken talent show, of course. Yeah, you heard correctly. The stars of the day, my hens, strutted around a makeshift runway as they showcased their highest jumps for treats, ingenious scratches in the mud, and an array of hair-raising, feather-raising tricks that surely inspired America's Got Talent. Neighbors hugged each other in uproarious laughter, and I genuinely began to feel a unifying sense in the air as people shared stories of their own pets, whimsically connecting through the captivating charm of my chickens. Amid the clucking chaos, a schoolyard-style competition erupted, as the neighbors found themselves trying to guess the name of the winner and commenting on the remarkable cluckular performances. All of this culminated in a surprise cameo. Our alleged queen of conflict, Karen Thompson, was spotted lurking behind a hedge. At first, I noticed a skeptical frown painted across her face, but as the day unfolded into wholesome chaos, I swore I could see curiosity creep in, softening her features ever so slightly. Perhaps the assured laughter melting ice around her heart would coax her out. But there was no guarantee she wouldn't go running back to her house the moment she heard a particularly enthusiastic "Bok!" Then, in a moment that felt utterly cinematic, Henrietta, my reigning hen, hopped onto a table and began to strut right toward Karen, as if she sensed she was the only one missing out on the fun. "Come on, Karen," I called out, my voice ringing with that infectious enthusiasm I'd cultivated throughout the day. "You can't let a little clucking deprive you of all this fun. Join us. Henrietta promises to only cluck good jokes." The crowd turned to watch her reaction, but would she brave it out? Would the ultimate Karen finally relent and join a throng of newly initiated poultry enthusiasts? Or would she fold under pressure and retreat to her world of pristine order? I felt like a nervous contestant on a talk show, waiting for a celebrity to make an appearance. What if Henrietta had more influence than I realized, drawing in the world's most dedicated hen-haver? And so, I stood on the edge of my chicken party, waiting for what would happen next. Would Karen join our ranks? Or would she ultimately stick to her complaints, like they were a badge of honor? As I called out to Karen, my heart thumped like a bass drum with a wild riff, celebrating her potential transformation. There she stood, peeking from behind her leafy refuge, balancing a cauldron of skepticism and curiosity in the pot of her personality. I half expected her to yank away from the hedge like a pulled string on a marionette, rejecting my invitation with a stern shake of her platinum curls. But what if this was the moment? What if the laughter and clucking had finally caught her attention and warmed her frosty demeanor? The entire party felt like a carnival, and I could feel the energy zipping around, each moment ridden with hope that our grumpy neighbor might shed her shell. "Henny grand," I whispered dramatically under my breath, imagining Karen adorned in feathers and sequins, sashaying down a runway of clucking silliness. Curiously, as I glanced back at the meticulous Karen, I noticed something odd. Her lips twitched, bordering on the hint of a smile. My chicken-hearted friends erupted in a mix of cluck-inspired hype. "Come on, Karen," Maya called out again, brandishing a feather boa she had brought just for this occasion. "Join us before we have to make you our official poultry judge. You never know. You might even find one of them looks better than your sweater collection." Chuckles rippled through the crowd like a wave crashing onto the beach, igniting Karen's uncertainty. "This is ridiculous," she finally declared, her voice so powerful even the roosters flapping around fell momentarily silent as if sensing the tension. Was she preparing to retreat again like a chicken tucking its head beneath a wing? Or was she about to clutch onto the extraordinary instead? And then it happened. A moment that could only be likened to a climax in a heartfelt family movie, where the grumpy neighbor learns the joys of connection and community. With a animals in pajamas twist? With a quick flick of her wrist, Karen stepped out of her botanical barricade and approached, a careful strut rather than a stroll. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'll participate in this. Whatever it is, she huffed, cheeks flushed from perhaps embarrassment or hot flashes from the sun or something more melodramatic like opposing the laughter of her neighbors. "Not too fast now," I grinned, trying to keep my cool while also suppressing the urge to burst into joyous applause. Everyone around us mirrored my enthusiasm, gasping dramatically, as if they were caught in a sudden flash mob of rooster enthusiasm. "Ladies and gentlemen," I exclaimed, channeling my inner ringmaster, "I present to you the newest judge in the Chicken Talent Show, Karen Thompson." Recognizing her new role, I plucked Henrietta from the stage, presenting her to Karen like a prized show pony. "Henrietta is an expert in dazzling flips. Don't let her royal demeanor fool you. She's got a show-stopping flair." As I placed the fluffed-up hen in Karen's hands, her hesitant gaze melted into inevitable resignation, and she managed a slight laugh, which encouraged me that the chickens were working their magic. Her feathers did not come from mere rivalries, I elaborated dramatically. They blossomed from friendship. Yes, indeed, friendship. Would you care to judge? Or shall I have Henrietta judge you instead? In an outburst of clucking chaos, the participants flooded forward, with their chickens showing off bizarre dance moves that could only be termed the fowl shuffle. Each hen attempted to outdo the last while spectators roared with laughter. Karen couldn't escape the contagious spirit, brought closer in by the sheer absurdity of the scene unfolding before her very own stern eyes. For reasons inexplicable, it felt as though our fates were entwined in that splendid cacophony, our surroundings transforming into a stage where hearts lightened with the weight of joyous levity. Okay, Karen finally relented, half laughing, half gawking at the raucous antics of the hens. I cannot believe I am enjoying this polluted paradise of feathers. And just like that, amidst the clucking and cheeping, our very own Karen became a laughter-fueled participant, instantly bridging the gap between us and them. Moments passed as our poultry performance progressed, and I reveled in the delightful sight, a bewildered Karen confidently tossing treats to her newfound feathered friends, her earlier complaints turning to gentle chuckles. Who could have imagined that my backyard showdown of fluffs and feathers would lead us to this moment? With a newfound sense of community, the clucking and prancing carried us all closer, shattering barriers and crafting connections, forging bonds that could withstand any angry squawk of discontent. It was magical watching my grumpy neighbor morph into a chicken-cooing, giggling champion, proudly tossing scratch grains with the finesse of a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. By the time the event concluded, what started as a battle over noise concerns had transformed into a full-blown engagement of spirited revelry. We even agreed to co-host future chicken events, and I envisioned Karen narrating the escapades of my chickens with the poise of a real host, a poultry superstar in the making. I looked out at the smiling faces, my friends, new neighbors basking in chicken splendor, and most notably, a beaming Karen, helping hand out prizes to the eager chicken contestants. Just like that, the absurdity of our budding poultry team kept spiraling. When had life turned into a whimsical journey with chickens leading the way? Had I perhaps been touched by the feathered hand of fate itself? What other surprises awaited in this madcap adventure? The buzz of excitement lingered in the air like the sweet scent of summer blooms, intertwining with the chorus of clucks and cheeps, resonating from my newly united flock and their giggling human companions. I felt like the lead actor in a summer blockbuster, if summer blockbusters featured chickens and accidentally turned into impromptu community-building events. Who would have ever thought my charming backyard, snuggled between the pristine lawns of my well-manicured neighbors, would become a hub of hilarity, connection, and poultry drama? With Karen now firmly planted among us, no longer a frowning judge set to smite my chicken dreams with wave after wave of complaints, I was filled with a confidence that sent flutters all the way from my heart to my wavy brown locks. As the last chicken wobbled its way off the makeshift stage, Karen, still beaming from the laughter and once guarded joy that had liberated her stern demeanor, stepped up to the front of the gathering crowd. "Okay, folks," she announced, her voice carrying a newfound twist of authority that compelled a hush from the boisterous crowd. I could hardly believe the sight before me. My former enemy now glowing under the spotlight, like an unexpected hero in romantic comedies. "Next time, we will have a costume category," she continued, her eyes sparkling as the crowd erupted into cheers, the deep sounds of encouragement harmonizing with the chirps of my chickens, all of whom seemed unfazed by the raucous laughter brewing around them. How unimaginable it was that we had managed to unite against a backdrop of feathery support, solving not just my own chicken conundrum, but joining together as an eccentric community. Just as I was reveling in the joy of this unlikely camaraderie, Maya nudged my arm and whispered, "Ethan, you realize this means we need to promote this chicken talent show, right?" Her fiery red hair bobbed enthusiastically as she spoke, and couldn't help but grin at the idea. "I can create some cheeky promotional materials. We could even have themed contests like Best Chicken Dance or Feather Dazzler." With a gleam in her eyes, she clapped her hands together, clearly excited to leap into action. The prospect of turning our hilarious little spectacle into an annual event suddenly loomed large, bursting at the seams with enthusiasm and the orange hues of sunset pouring color over the eager faces, ready for a chicken-fueled extravaganza. With newfound motivation buzzing around me, I jumped into planning mode. The thought of chickens competing for prizes had ignited something in me. Like an encore performance after an explosive rock concert, I imagined posters around town adorned with flamboyant chickens in costumes, strutting their stuff and bidding community members to attend. I chuckled as I envisioned Karen's face on one of those posters, dressed as the head poultry judge, surrounded by chicken-themed decor, her frown and passion for order transformed into excitement and inspiration. With each idea twirling around my mind like the chickens into a dizzying ballet, I felt the longing for this event to stress the importance of laughter, connection, and some fantastical poultry magic. I dove deep into planning, organizing meetings with my neighbors from both ends of the spectrum, those who were once skeptical and our loyal supporters drawn to the absurdity of the situation. The conversations transformed into hilarious brainstorming sessions filled with witty banter, ridiculous chicken puns, and the fervor that only comes when a community feels united by the bizarre. There was Joe from across the street, who had secretly groomed his own chicken dreams. Turns out, he had been just as involved in this clucking chaos. We also welcomed back Karen, who proved surprisingly deft at managing the various quirks of our evolving community-centered talent show. Who knew that beneath her tailored blouses burned a burning passion for chickens just waiting to break free into the limelight of barnyard fame? As the days fluttered by, there came a time for the local news to report on our poultry-packed preparations, and to my utter astonishment, reporters were nestled in our backyard, cameras flashing like paparazzi chasing a rock star out of the exclusive club. Karen and I stood side by side, both donning matching chicken hats. Yes, they were as outrageous and adorable as they sounded, while she eloquently spoke about fostering community spirit and the joys of being closer to our funny feathered friends. I was left utterly agape at how our adventure had morphed from a trial of loud clucks and escalating complaints to a multifaceted feature on the importance of quirky bonding over something as unexpected as chickens. With our sights firmly set on the weekend, the Chicken Talent Show Day arrived with a fanfare of vibrant colors, ridiculous costumes, and an atmosphere buzzing with exuberance. I watched my little garden of feathers seamlessly transition into a stage for a jubilant chicken parade, with Karen handing out ribbons and cheering like a proud mama hen overseeing her brood. As I marveled at the transformed neighborhood spirit around me, Karen in the center of it all, the joyful cries and laughter echoed in my mind, reminding me of how truly absurd, yet wonderfully uplifting life could become amidst the most unexpected circumstances. And honestly, who could foresee that clucking chickens could pave the path toward not just laughter, but meaningful connections? What other delightful escapades awaited in this ever-quirky journey? The day of the Chicken Talent Show dawned bright and clear, the sky a brilliant canvas of blue, sprinkled with fluffy white clouds that seemed to float lazily in admiration of our quirky event. I stood in my backyard, hands on my hips, surveying the scene like an overzealous director at a Broadway play. Banners fluttered in the gentle breeze, each emblazoned with chicken puns ranging from egg-cellent performances, await to cluck yeah. My friends had gone all out with decorations. Even the chickens were donning their finest, adorned with sequins and bows. There was a definite air of jubilation as neighbors, once divided by Karen's complaints, mingled over lemonade and egg salad sandwiches, a real poultry picnic. It was like a majestic family reunion, where instead of relatives, participants had roughly the same number of hens as personalities, represented under one otherwise tranquil sky. As the event kicked off, I took a deep breath, soaking in the enthusiastic atmosphere, which buzzed with a delightful mixture of laughter and nervous clucks from the chicks. Maya stood at the makeshift stage, a microphone in hand, her fiery red hair gleaming in the sunlight like a beacon of energy. "Welcome to the very first Chicken Talent Show," she announced, her voice booming across the lawn. "Today we'll witness extraordinary talents from our feathery friends. And remember, it's not just about the chickens. This show is a platform for us all to celebrate the quirks that brought us together." The audience erupted into cheers, and I couldn't help but feel a wave of pride wash over me. It felt like we'd taken a giant leap forward from the locked chicken coops of our stubborn past. To kick things off, Karen herself took the stage, now fully embracing her role as the poultry pageant judge. Clad in a custom-made chicken print dress that her daughter had convinced her to wear, she appeared both amused and determined. "I had no idea clucking could be so much fun," she declared, offering a sweeping wave of her arm. The audacity of wearing a patterned dress emblazoned with my girls' likenesses was undeniably hilarious. But here she was, stealing the show and mingling like the true poultry princess she'd become. It struck me how utterly transformed she was from the stern woman who had filled my days with complaints just weeks before. Now, she was immersed in the joy of the event, laughing alongside neighbors and cheering for the dazzling chickens parading their talents. As the first act began, a chicken named Henrietta showcasing her confused version of the chicken dance, the audience was captivated and doubled over in laughter. "Go, Henrietta, go," I yelled, while the crowd clapped and supported her bird-brained boogie with ferocious enthusiasm. The jokes flowed effortlessly, and without missing a beat, Karen threw out a challenge to the enthusiastic crowd. "I want to see the best chicken dance from you humans next." With that utterance, suddenly the spotlight shifted, not just to our feathered friends, but to the humans in the crowd flailing their arms and flapping their elbows like the chickens themselves. A sight that wasn't just hilarious, but created a bonding moment encouraged by joyous absurdity. My friends formed a circle of laughter and outrageous choreography, and it became clear that this show was something special, binding us all in ways that felt simultaneously ridiculous and deeply connecting. The competition rolled on, each act more absurd than the last as Karen was joined by local talent. Definitely exhibitionists interested in everything poultry. There was Gary, the excellent ventriloquist, with his faux chickens, performing tricks while cleverly inserted jokes had the audience roaring with laughter. Then, the infamous McMahon duo, known for their drumstick duets, made a surprise appearance with their feathered friends strumming nifty tunes harmonizing with chickenish clucking, as if they were a real barnyard bard group. In between acts, kids chased my fluffball hens, inadvertently inviting a small fiasco when several roosters made their escape from backstage. Still, the joy radiating around us made those moments even more comical, with children squealing in delight, coaxing our runaway chickens back to safety amidst giggling parents. As the final act approached, a tense quiet overtook the crowd, anticipation bubbling in the air like soda fizz waiting to burst. Karen stood at the edge of the stage, excitement gleaming in her eyes. "Now, our closing act. Please welcome the majestic Rooster Rock Stars." She dramatically gestured towards a band of roosters clad in sparkly capes that caught the sunlight with every entrancing movement. They strutted onto the stage, clearly relishing the attention, and promptly bellowed out a cacophony of crowing harmonics, loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. I watched in disbelief, part amazed, part horrified, but everyone was on board. Laughter erupted as we witnessed the magnificent chaos playing out before us. The sheer absurdity of feathery rock stars crowing together before an entire crowd felt like some form of cultural mild rebellion, a true moment of joyful madness. When the final act faded into a fitting finale, loud cheers erupted, unifying us all as one rambunctious family cheering for our quirky bovine-inspired spectacle. As I grinned ear to ear, I realized that perhaps Karen and I had built something far greater than just a conversation starter or a nuisance. The chicken talent show had transformed into a beautiful symbol of us finding common ground amidst the delightful chaos of life. Everyone mingled afterward, trading stories not of complaints, but of banded hilarity, united in laughter, and embracing that peculiar truth we'd all learnt. It really was our tender-hearted chickens who orchestrated this fantastical reunion in the first place. Could it be that our journey was only beginning, with even more feathery fun in store? As the last notes of our dazzling rooster rock stars faded, the exhilarating buzz of community lingered in the air, and I basked in the afterglow of our chicken talent show. It felt like we had collectively written a new chapter in our little neighborhood's history, one where squawking hens had united us against the formidable forces of boredom and complaint. I couldn't help but notice that even Karen was beaming with joy as she mingled with neighbors, revealing the "She's a Feathered Fiend" button pinned to her blouse, which I surely must have missed until now. It was a comically victorious sight, juxtaposed against her previously austere authority, almost like watching a villain turn into an overly enthusiastic sidekick of a delightful rom-com. All around me, laughter erupted like popcorn in a microwave. It seemed the chickens had succeeded where civil discourse had failed. Maya nudged me and pointed towards Karen, who was deep in conversation with Miss Thompson, the neighborhood grump who also happened to be her husband. "What's the bet?" Karen tries to pass off her decision to boil an egg as deeply philosophical after watching the show, she whispered, her eyes sparkling with mischief. I couldn't keep the grin off my face. The thought of her earnestly attempting to debate the egg's existential value had me chuckling just at its absurdity. But deeper than that, I realized this day had transformed not just the perspective of the neighbors, but also my own. I directly viewed the chicken coop scene with fresh eyes. What we had growing there wasn't merely an inconvenience, but a lively haven of vibrancy and togetherness. Each cluck became a note in an ongoing song of camaraderie, punctuated by bursts of laughter and joy. However, as the sun dipped lower and illuminated everything in a warm golden hue, the buzzing atmosphere began to settle. I instinctively felt the collective energy shifting from exuberance to reflection. People milled about, discussing which acts had been their favorites. Henrietta's dance won most hearts, and, "Can you believe we made that happen?" Vibes radiated everywhere. Then I ambled over to Karen, who was still animatedly gesturing as she detailed her newfound favor for our feathery friends. "You know, Ethan, perhaps I was too hasty in my judgments," she conceded, a gleam in her eyes. Debatable, sure, but it was clear there was a new Karen in town, one who hadn't just been swept along by excitement but genuinely warmed to the idea of seeing chickens as a quirky addition rather than a pestilence on her patio. With a boldness fueled by newfound friendship, I decided to strike while the iron was hot. "Karen, what if we made this an annual thing?" I exclaimed, excitement bubbling over so rapidly I practically flailed like one of our chickens. We could feature local talent, and maybe even a mini farmer's market. Just imagine, Chickenology, the annual celebration of clucks and community. Karen blinked at me, her eyebrows shooting up as though I had revealed the secret formula to achieve world peace. "I mean, it could be something extraordinary," I continued, in full enthusiastic pitch mode. "A chance for us all to showcase what makes our neighborhood unique. I bet we could even get the library involved for some educational booths." Maya slipped her arm through mine, her eyes sparkling like a firefly as she clearly caught my excitement. "First, I need to check with the city about permits for larger events," Karen said, waving her hands as if chasing off the confetti of skepticism in her own mind. "Also, I'll need help with planning. It seems like it could be a lot of work." And for a second, I thought I saw the dawn of actual collaboration glimmering in her eyes. Could it be that our chicken escapades had embedded a twinge of teamwork into Karen as well? "I can help," Maya interjected, overflowing with team spirit. "A community event means community planning, and if there's anything I love more than chickens, it's planning quirky events." The thrill of visions danced in my head. This wasn't just a call to arms for poultry enthusiasts, but a chance to do something great together. As I stood there, a surge of inspiration overtook me. We could even make Best Cluck Awards for citizens in categories like Best Neighbor Who Complains the Least, I suggested mischievously, suppressing a grin, or Best Chicken Costume. Karen threw her head back with laughter and smirked mischievously. "All right, only if you promise not to let your chicken steal the show," she countered playfully, and I suddenly realized how far we had come. I could hardly believe I was engaging in banter with the very woman who had once seen my backyard chickens as a fiery threat to her ideal suburban life. I felt like an emotional phoenix rising from stinging complaints and judgments, completely transformed by clucking wisdom and feathered hilarity. By the time the sun set, enveloping the lawn in a rich vermilion glow, I had a spring in my step and a spark of excitement sizzling within. This chicken talent show was just the beginning. Plans were hatched. Ideas were sprouting like a freshly planted garden. And as we all packed up our feathery extravaganza, I turned to Maya, who was beaming with the same conspiratorial glint in her eyes. "It's on!" I exclaimed, my voice bubbling with exuberance. "The first Chickenology Community Fair will go down in history." She laughed. "Just promise to keep me out of any egg-related controversies." And in that moment, with the amazing journey and community adventure ahead of us, I couldn't help but think, who knew chickens had the power to not only ruffle some feathers, but bond a neighborhood in joyous celebration? As the excitement of the day slowly wound down, the golden glow of sunset cast a warm spotlight on our makeshift chicken talent show stage, where Henrietta and her feathered friends had stolen the hearts of nearly everyone present, including Karen, who was still laughing beside me. I couldn't honestly believe how quickly the tide had turned in this ridiculous poultry saga. The very woman who once deemed my backyard a haven for chaos now had a skip in her step, bouncing ideas about the upcoming Chickenology Community Fair. I felt like we'd just cast aside the shroud of negativity and debuted the latest hit Broadway show about chickens and camaraderie, where the audience clapped and twirled like happy little clappers. The transformation was real, and with a glimmer of hope, I craved to capitalize on this unexpected alliance. Just then, a vision of Karen, boisterous and enthusiastic, started shaping in my mind. After years of being the woman who complains to everyone, she was morphing into a proactive community member. You know, Karen, I began with mischief in my tone. If we're doing awards, we might as well make it fun, right? Why not add a prize for most enthusiastic clucky helper or best chicken-themed dance moves? We could get the kids involved too. I couldn't suppress a cheeky wink. I watched as the corners of her mouth curled up, subtle sprinkles of amusement crossing her expression. Maybe we were heading toward a frolicking frenzy of chicken-themed chaos that no one could anticipate, especially not after all the angst we started with in our neighborhood. Absolutely, Ethan. Not just awards, but everyone can showcase their creative flair, she proclaimed, excitement spilling from her in waves. I could even reroute my knitting club to make chicken costumes for the winter. Last year, we made a chicken sweater that fit my great Aunt Marge's cat perfectly. I could hardly contain my laughter at the mental image of feisty felines strolling around in snazzy chicken sweatshirts. Our personal chickens had transformed our dear neighbor from a grumpy old curmudgeon to someone frantically waving their hands around in jubilant enthusiasm for chicken shenanigans. I mean, could this really be happening? Maybe the world was in fact a much better place when proud Poultry took center stage. Plans for the fair snowballed faster than the clucking of my hens during feeding time. I started to envision booths bursting with activities, a guess the number of eggs game, a sign-making station for enthusiastic supporters, and a food booth serving chicken-themed treats. Who could resist a chickpea salad or sunny-side-up egg sandwich while they watched the parade of poultry royalty take their turns strutting around? People rallied around the concept, and it made the flurry of excitement feel electric, like a static pulse, buzzing below our skin. I could see Candy from 3 houses down already carting her famous brownies and planning ponderful prizes, while Mr. Thompson, Karen's less enthused husband, muttered something about, "Who benefits from chickens anyway?" I shook my head, laughing quietly as I replied, "Who knew chickens could become the centerpiece of a block party?" As we wrapped up the evening, I turned back to Maya, who still radiated that dementia spirit she had cultivated throughout the day. "This is going to change everything," I declared dramatically, cheesing for all I was worth. "Just think, a neighborhood defined by a celebration of clucky companionship rather than complaints about whose lawn is too long." Maya clapped her hands, laughter spilling from her in colorful bursts. "Ethan, I'm inspired. Can you imagine all the epic chicken memes that will rise from this gathering? When life gives you eggs, make sunny side-ups. We'll become a viral sensation." I chuckled, diving deep into her infectious enthusiasm. Apparently, we'd become a chicken-loving assembly line of creativity in our quest to flip the narrative on Karen's complaints, and each flap of feather was nudging us closer together. With the last rays of sun disappearing behind the rooftops, we lingered in our backyard, enjoying the echoes of laughter that lingered like the fading warmth of a bonfire. I felt something within me shift in ways that I didn't quite understand yet. A sense of community burgeoned alongside the clucks and crowing of chickens. I glanced at the roster of ideas still floating in the ether, thick enough to grasp at any moment. As my eyes met Karen's, who was discussing knitting techniques with Maya, an absurd thought crossed my mind. If chickens could truly unite us all, what other positive adventures awaited just outside, in this vibrant world waiting to be nurtured? And then, buoyed by glee, adorned in the chaos of chicken dreams and neighborly revelry, I raised my glass in a toast to my flock of cluckers and the unlikely change agents they had become, not just for me, but for everyone in our cheerful community. To chickens, to surprises, and to the delightful absurdity of life, I shouted, capturing the moment as everyone echoed cheers and laughter, all united by our quirky feathered friends. Who knew that a couple of cluckers had the incredible ability to hopscotch over grievances, banter with grumpy neighbors, and brew up a cauldron full of camaraderie. I had my answer now, and it was one that was undoubtedly worth clucking about.